although there have been no reports of live specimens or recordings of them since the tragic 7th of September 1936, scientists agreed that the large number of anecdotal sightings makes it almost certain that the species continued to exist for at least another decade, and some even believe that Tasmanian tigers, avoiding all contact with humans, survived well into the late 1990s, perhaps even into the 2000s. This is certainly possible. After all, almost half of Tasmania is still forested, and 40% is unexplored, so there is hope that the Tasmanian tiger is hiding somewhere. In addition, people from Tasmania and even parts of Australia still occasionally report encounters with Tasmanian tigers, with recent analysis suggesting that there have been more than 1,200 such cases since 1936, some even supported by photographic evidence. Of course, given the dog-like appearance and poor quality of the photographs, it is possible that many of these cases were misidentifications. The chance sightings of tourists, hikers and campers are rightly difficult to trust, but there are more reliable sources, as many cryptozoological subcultures and enthusiastic amateur naturalists have been keen to find possible surviving specimens in the years since Benjamin's death. Certainly, the Tasmanian tiger has aroused more obsession, suspicion, and controversy than any other creature ever declared extinct. Even universities have spent a fortune on traps, cameras, and major expeditions to find it. But all their attempts have sadly failed to capture, or at least photograph clearly, this enchanting, almost mythically beautiful marsupial. Perhaps the closest anyone ever came was David Fleay, who in 1945 set out with his family on a 4-month expedition into the wilderness around Jane River in western Tasmania, with the aim of capturing a live male and female to breed in his Victorian sanctuary, and save the species. He set up snares with extra padding to prevent them hurting the animals. But this made the traps ineffective, as one of the animals got caught and escaped without a scratch. It did, however, leave behind a tuft of hair, which Fleay kept. As he said, he positively identified it as that of a Tasmanian tiger. But even the famous marsupiologist did not remain optimistic after this unsuccessful hunt and gave up hope that the species could possibly be saved from extinction. In the second half of the 20th century, alleged sightings of specimens, vocalizations, footprints, and other signs suggesting that the species may not be completely extinct were most frequently reported from the areas explored by Fleay, so, western and especially northwestern Tasmania. However, scientists have long pointed out that we may have been too quick to write off the possibility of Tasmanian tigers surviving in the wilds of Western New Guinea and Papua New Guinea. The argument is that the island where these two countries are located is undoubtedly one of the most remote, unspoilt, wild, and primitive places in the world, about whose nature we know remarkably little. Although it is believed that there are thousands of species still unknown to science, New Guinea is already home to an immense biodiversity, containing almost 10% of the total species on the planet, roughly the same as the United States, which is 20 times larger in area. This Melanesian tropical paradise is mostly covered in rainforest, but there is also a lot of mountainous terrain. It is therefore very challenging to traverse, and once you venture into it, it is difficult to make contact with the outside world. There may be no major cities in this wilderness, but there are nearly 1,000 indigenous tribal groups speaking almost as many different languages. It is estimated that there are at least 40 tribes that have never had any contact with modern civilization. We know from experience that these people are very suspicious of newcomers and can react violently when they encounter explorers. This, combined with the aforementioned characteristics of the terrain and the inability to communicate with the outside world, makes scientific expeditions to this part of the world very dangerous and virtually impossible. As a result, large parts of New Guinea remain completely unexplored. It is not inconceivable that the Tasmanian tiger has been successfully hiding there for several millennia, while we thought it was extinct, unable to compete with the ancestor of the dingo. But we should know that in New Guinea, a different lineage to the modern Australian dingo evolved from introduced dogs. They are called New Guinea singing dogs, or New Guinea Highland dogs. Not much is known about them, other than that they live in a harsh and remote environment between 3,900 and 4,200 meters above sea level, and that they vocalize in a truly unique way. Although, interestingly, they do have something in common with the Tasmanian tiger. They were declared extinct because no credible scientific evidence of their presence was reported for almost half a century. But in 2016, a team of biologists with hidden cameras finally succeeded to find and photograph a small surviving population. Then, in 2018, they managed to observe 18 dogs in the wild, studying their behavior, demographics, and morphology. The overall population is probably very small, and because they live so high in the highlands and are slightly smaller, less aggressive and timider than the Australian dingo, they may not have completely dominated the Tasmanian tigers in the past. If scientists have spent decades trying to rediscover the highland singing dogs, which live in large packs and are so named because of their really loud calls, it seems quite understandable that they have simply not been able to find the silent marsupial, which lives alone or at most in pairs. Another animal example that gives us cause for optimism is a large terrestrial bird called the black-naped pheasant pigeon, which was thought to be extinct for 140 years until it was captured on a trail camera on one of the islands near the eastern tip of New Guinea, just a few years after the singing dogs. New Guinea may well be the next best hope for finding the Tasmanian tiger. Many of the villagers or local guides who can actually communicate with members of the indigenous tribes in their own language occasionally hear a story from them about the creature they called dobsegna, or striped dog. Only a few years ago, the scientific world was stunned by a rumor that a man from a remote coastal village in Papua New Guinea had found 2 striped dog puppies in a hollow tree trunk in the rainforest and taken them home. He wanted to domesticate them to help him hunt. Although one of the puppies was frightened to death and died soon after, he managed to raise the other for a year and brought it to semi-adulthood. As the man described his pet as having the characteristics of a Tasmanian tiger, scientists decided to investigate. But by the time they reached the village, another dog from the village had fought the alleged tiger and killed it. The owner then cooked and ate it. The disappointed researchers were left with a pile of charred and destroyed bones. Only the lower jawbone was in slightly better condition. Several experts have already looked at photographs of it and agree that it could be that of a Tasmanian tiger. If the villagers' account is true, it may seem like a huge missed opportunity from a scientific point of view, but let's just say, it's more of an incentive to keep digging.